Thank you. We're happy to be here. With me today, Brian Payne, Ben Sullivan. They'll talk throughout this presentation because you don't want me to draw anything. Scott can attest to that and worked with Scott before.
Scott, should we stay and listen to him or just send him on his way?
On his way. Just kidding.
We started out looking at your current facility and trying to identify the long-term needs that you have. And so if I can operate this correctly. Some of the things that we're going to go through, we looked at current conditions that you have at the jail, along with the county had a construction company came in and kind of took a little bit deeper dive into repair work based off of what the state inspection was identifying as inoperable. Then we did a inmate bed projection based on your current data, average length of stay. Average length of stay, we'll get into that when I get to that, but one of the things that we noticed right off the bat was your average length of stay was about double what it should be and double what the national average is. So as soon as that red flag went up, I said, before we move forward, I need to meet with the DA and some of the judges and kind of go through why is it so much out of whack. And so first thing I did was I looked at anybody that was in the jail for over 100 days, that had been there 100 days or more. And then we looked at what they were charged with, which was a little bit of an eye opener for me. Because at the time you had 139 in jail and you had 56 charged with capital murder, which explained a lot on why your average length of stay was so great. It takes just so long to go through that. We also calculated the peaking ratio.
All right, just a moment.
Yes, sir.
Did we invite anybody from the sheriff's department here?
Sheriff is aware we're having this meeting.
He's on the phone with staff right now. We have the sheriff. We're trying to find out if he's going to be coming over.
Say again?
He's on his way.
He's on his way.
Sheriff.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. We looked at the peaking ratio. What peaking is different times throughout the year, you'll have more inmates at one time than you do others. And so it's important to look at those times when those numbers peaked. We looked at classified in order to properly classify inmates. Then we put together some architectural plan options and then some opinions of probable cost. And then we'll finish up with conclusions and recommendations. I introduced my associates that are with me today. We also worked with Jordan McMillan that was here, as county manager, worked with Sheriff Brain and his staff in collecting all of the data that we got. Also got some of it from the state of North Carolina. And as far as county population numbers, we use the Office of Budget Management, which I think is pretty consistent with what most county uses for their county population numbers. You have a rated capacity, and then you have what is known as operational capacity. The rated capacity is what the state gave you when that jail was built. In other words, they said you've got 150 beds, you cannot hold over 150, you're rated for 150. But to get 150 inmates, it would almost have to be like a perfect world type situation to where you had the right amount of females, the right amount of felons, the right amount of misdemeanors, all that could be in there together. So that takes us to what's known as a operational capacity. Operational capacity is about 75% of your state rated capacity. For example, if you've got a housing unit with say 48 for females and you've only got 24 females, that's 24 beds, you can't put anything else in. So that's what kind of drives that operational capacity. Jails, once they're open, I mean, they're not like any other county building that's closed in nights and weekends and holidays. Once it's open, it's open. And it's housing people that don't really want to be there. And so they age much quicker than any other county building. You have people in there trying to tear it up. And so typically, I always say they age kind of like dog years. So if you got a 15-year-old building, that's kind of like having a 30-year-old building because it's open 24/7. Some of these pictures are of some of the current conditions in the jail. These were done by a construction company that the county reached out to, that took some photographs of some of the areas. You'll see this picture here that you see, that's known as cane mesh. There's a company that makes that mesh. The state's not happy with that because it's not anti-ligature. So anywhere an inmate's at, they could tie a sheet, a towel, or anything through those squares and hang themselves. Here's just some more pictures of some current conditions. You can see where the floor, the concrete is separating in several places. A lot of the rust around the plumbing issues and actually through the walls. That's some of your security electronics. One thing that we did note when we went through, excuse me, your intercoms, your cameras, and your door locks, none of those are integrated together. What should happen is if the inmate hits a button, which you by standards, you've got to have two-way communication. When they hit that button, it should come up and you should also have a camera that pulls up so that person in that control room can see who it is as well as know who they're talking to. That's not the case here. You can see where they've damaged where the mirror goes in the cells. And these are all just CMU block walls. There's some pictures of, that's a combination toilet in the handicap cell. That's probably noted on your jail inspection because the handicap railing that you see there, you cannot put your hand all the way around it because that makes it, it's not anti-ligature either. Handicap rails in a handicap cell must have plates on the bottom of it, so you can't tie anything around it. Those are not like that. Plus that toilet is actually out of operation.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Sir?
Repeat that?
The handicap rails in an ADA cell, every housing unit is required to have one handicap cell. And they have to have the handrails and stuff with it. Well, they can't be just a rail. On the bottom of the rail, it's got to have a plate. So they can't tie anything around it and hang themselves.
Okay, now these pictures you took, was this at the beginning of your process or?
This was yes, sir. This was about, we had just started. And then these, like I said, these were done by a construction company that the county reached out to.
Okay.
Trying to get ahead of your jail inspection. These were just trying to fix some stuff that your jail inspection noted as out of compliance.
Okay.
A lot of it was cosmetic, a lot of it was plumbing, lighting. Just, we noticed some of the stuff with like the ADA that's out of compliance.
Okay.
This estimate was done by Bordeaux Construction on just those deficiencies that they showed there. I actually spoke to them about this and they said that was probably not even touching everything, but just to maybe get you by. They think in reality, you're probably $9 to $10 million to fix everything on that state inspection, just repairing. Then we started looking at your bed projections, and you see where we use 6 years. ADA from 2017 was 159. The average over that study period was 142. Again, that's above your 112, which is your operation capacity. It's a graph showing the same thing, showing your rated capacity versus operational capacity. Your ADP exceeded its rated capacity 3 of the 6 years, and your operational capacity all 6 years, with as many as 54 over your operational capacity at one time.
Is there any remedy to the length of stay?
Yes, sir. When we met with the DA and that bunch to try to get that average length of stay down, is constantly identifying the people that are in jail, how long they've been in jail, and trying to expedite that through the system. We had a pretty lengthy meeting, and a couple of your commissioners were there at that meeting. I left there with a positive view that the DA agreed to try to see what they could do. We did a lot of legwork for them by pointing out those that had been there over 100 days. You had at the time, I think, 4 that had been there for over 5 years or close to 5 years. Now, in their defense, these are capital murder cases, and those cases take a lot longer to make their way through the criminal justice system. Average length of stay is the single most important thing to try to control.
And the average length of stay at most facilities is what?
Anywhere, usually when it gets to be about 25 days, then that raises a flag with us. You know, it tells you if it's over 25, then there's a slowdown somewhere. But there again, we don't see 56 out of 139 charged with capital murder. So that's got a lot to do with it. Your admissions, you'll see in 2017, you admitted 2,484. Your highest was in 2018, 2,500. 2020 and part of 21 were COVID years, where a lot of people were not coming to jail just because of the COVID. You were getting people out. And so that's why we typically do 5 years. We did 6 because we knew that 1 year being so low due to COVID would kind of change things. Using the admission rates, let me back up a little bit. Your admissions, you average 565, almost 566 per 10,000 of your population. So that's what your admission rate is based on, how many people are being arrested and being admitted to your jail per 10,000 of county population. That's a little bit high from what we normally see. Normally see, I'd say 500 at the max, usually in the 400 zone. Talked a little bit about the average length of stay already. Regardless of what you get your average length of stay to, there's got to be a conscious effort to try to continue to work to decrease that number, because that has the biggest impact on what you're going to need to, how to address your bed capacity and bed need. The state no longer houses misdemeanors in the state prison system. That was a change just a few years ago, to where if you had an inmate sentenced in a misdemeanor to more than 90 days, they went to the State Department of Corrections. Well, they changed that, and now they belong to the county. So you're not able to ship convicted misdemeanors of more than 90 days to the state. That law went into effect about 3 years ago.
That's 120 days, a sentence of 120 or 180.
They still belong to the county. Housing misdemeanors in the state prison system,
I thought they had a 180-day tag on that. Okay.
sometimes you might can get help, but their law changed to where misdemeanors are housed at the the county jail facilities. North Carolina was one of the only states that wasn't doing that anyway. Most all jails and all states had already quit housing misdemeanors at the state prison system. We talked about the average length of stay, and the national average says from 10 to 20 days should be your average length of stay. I can tell you from having done probably 40 in North Carolina, if you've got 10 days average length of stay, you are very rare. You just don't see them being that low. It's normally not until it gets to be close to the high 20s to 25 before we start seeing that be a problem. The average length of stay, this is how that's calculated, just in case you want to look at the numbers. It's, you take your average daily population times 365 and divide that by the number of admissions that year. And that's how that calculation came up. Excuse me. 2017, you were at 23, 2018, 22, 2019, 27, 2020 at 40, 21 at 37, and 2022 was your highest at 46.5. your average length of stay over that 6 years was 33, which that's still higher than what it should be. But taking into consideration, once again, that you've got 56 charged with capital murder. Typical capital murder case in a jail is going to be there 3 to 4 years, regardless. If it's a capital murder case, it just takes that long to go through how time they go through discovery and all of that stuff. That's typical that we see. That's when we figured out the 46.5 days, that's when we said, we've got to, before we even do anything else, we need to talk to the criminal justice system and see what can be done. And we had a really great meeting, and I followed back up, and we've already seen some of those numbers drop already, so that has worked some. This again just goes on.
You said you had great conversation with the criminal, with the DA and everything. What were they saying? What were they saying? What did they share with you? The way in which they want to move to lower the numbers?
Well, we talked to them about lots of things about, why were they there so long? And some of it was they felt like they were not getting investigative reports right. And then some was availability of their staff, availability of judges in the courtroom. We went through all that. So then we tried to focus on things that we might could fix. I mean, I can't control what AOC does. It's giving them a different district attorney, giving district judges, different clerks. So that's when we focused on that. Everybody had been there over 100 days and said, how many of these can we move? And I think Mr. Austin that was there will tell you, we went down that list exhaustively.
We went through it with a fine coon phone.
We went
Stone.
inmate by inmate through that whole list and the DA was very amenable to saying, what can we do? They were actually looking up stuff saying, oh yeah, we can get them next week. We can get this one the next week. And so, and I followed back up with the sheriff, and some of that actually did happen. So I can't stress enough though, somebody on the county side is going to have to manage that. You need somebody at that jail to constantly be looking at it, and when it gets to be over X amount of days, try to see what they can do to work with the judges and the DA to expedite those. Because if not, you're going to be back to that 46 day again, and you'll never build your way out of that. If you've got a 46.5 day average length of stay, you're going to constantly be building jails. And we don't think that's practical.
Have you ever seen the state bring in a special prosecutor to expedite more cases? If we just opened up another courtroom and just said, this is gonna be a murder courtroom until we get it resolved.
I've seen counties try to expedite some jail cases sometimes. What we heard in that meeting, and Mr. Austin, please correct me if I misheard, but it was a combination of reasons. It wasn't just one reason. It was a combination of stuff. And so I think just bringing a judge in might not do it. It was court reporter availability, clerk staff availability, courtroom availability. It was lots of different things. But I think if you have somebody tracking that and constantly saying, hey, what about this guy? This person's been in here for X amount of days. They're charged with this. What can we do? The other thing we heard was y'all have such a low part of court appointed attorneys. They told us you only really have two. And so I asked about if you were looking at the public defender route. That
Okay.
might be a possibility. That takes a little time to get put in place.
Given that 56 murderers or whatever is a real issue. Did you look at any of the other ways to expedite other inmates?
Yes, sir. We didn't look at matter of fact, out of that ones that've been there more than 100 days, we focus more on the non-murder because we know they're going to be there.
Well,
You said you did follow up. Sheriff, have anyone follow up on to try to expedite these people in that form? Were you just telling us, have anyone been assigned to do that?
Well, the number has dropped from, down to, I believe I sent email you all this,
Yeah,
dropped
that's,
down to, I believe, 46.
so you do have someone assigned
Yeah,
to it.
and just like Todd said, there's a lot of moving parts. From the Chief Justice Paul Newby signing another Superior Court of Vance County, having clerks in place, having district attorneys, ADAs in place. So it's a combination of things to make this work. No blame on one particular group or organization.
Have you-
For blame, I'm just
Yeah, I
wondering,
know, yeah.
since I
To
saw
get
it,
this
since it's
ball
coming
rolling.
down, I'm just wondering if somebody over that, since
And
I
I
agree.
understand today, I talked to Sergeant Dozier, they had a good day in Superior Court, they took quite a few pleas today.
Okay.
Have you and the DA ever sat down like y'all agreed?
No, sir.
No one has ever, you haven't reached out to him and he haven't reached out to you.
Sean, what you said, I missed what you said.
When we had this meeting that he was talking about,
Right.
the sheriff and the DA had agreed to sit down to have a conversation to try to get some of the stuff started to get it resolved. I was asking the sheriff, have the DA reached out to him in a conversation to try to get it started? Because if the DA don't reach out, it's never a starting point. So
Let me-
can you reach out to the DA and see if he would love to sit down at the table and see if you two can put your heads together to get a starting point?
So let me ask you a question here. When you say somebody in the county, these are your words. This is an exact quote from you. When you say somebody in the county needs to monitor this system, who is that somebody in the, where is that?
I
So
I would say
located.
somebody in the detention center
Okay.
that sees.
So that is to be somebody in the detention center.
Even
who
if,
needs to monitor
even if you
this.
have to put somebody in charge of that, if it's a new position,
But that person is located in the detention.
because they see the jail data every day.
Right, in the jail. Okay.
I can tell you from experience I ran the jail in Alamance County for years. We had the same problem. We got the county to approve a position that's all they did every day was look at every single inmate that was in jail, how long they had been there, and they worked together with the DA and the judges to expedite those cases. And
So
try to
that's,
get them
that's a
started.
position then that resides under the sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually was able to hire a retired magistrate that already knew the system. And so they knew, what all had to happen. And it worked out pretty well for us. And then I tracked it with dollars saved. Put a dollar value on what's it costing me to house an inmate every day. And then if I get them out X amount of days early, how much money did I just save the county? First year we had that program, it was over $400,000. Not really money saved, but cost avoidance. We didn't spend it because they weren't there.
So let me ask the sheriff, do we have anybody in your facility that monitors, that he's suggesting all of these?
Which had that position is vacant, due to, attracting people to the detention center. The salary is not there for people to want to come and work in there. Called jail liaison officer. It's been in existence since I became part of the sheriff.
That's true.
So
Sir,
have
when you
you
say
ever had anybody to monitor?
Yes, sir, we have.
And how long is
Matter
the,
of fact, the person that left, within the last year, she went to Graham County Sheriff Office.
so that position has been vacant for a year?
It's been vacant close to 2 years, yes.
When you say you were in Alamance County and you had this position and it came down, I assume since you left, how is it? Is it?
I've been gone since '02. So I'm assuming they're still
It's-
using it. I
it's-
don't know.
It's
I-
still working.
I had a hard time being able to get inmates out. And so that was the only thing. We had and not to talk about my situation, but we had 156 beds at the time and I had an average daily population of 356. And so that was way before statewide misdemeanor program,
Okay.
all of that. So I had to do everything I could to get them out.
Get them out of there. Okay.
We talked a little bit about the peaking ratio. That's at times throughout the year that you have more that are admitted and more that are housed than in others. And so you still have to allow for that, because you still have to place to put those at times when it peaks. And that has a direct impact on your overcrowding. My concern with it being overcrowding like that at peak times is it puts the county at liability for being overcrowded. Overcrowding itself is not unconstitutional, but the other conditions, the access to toilets, showers, recreation areas, all of that exceeds that requirement. So then we looked at your peak times. You can see in 2017, even though your average daily population was 159, you had a high population of 190. And what I did is looking at those, that wasn't just one single day for the whole year that you hit 190. That was multiple times throughout the year that you hit 190. You see in 2019, you actually hit 201, and in 2022, you hit 160. So the average throughout that whole time was 174 inmates, which is 24 over your rated capacity, probably about 70 over your operation capacity. So then we looked at your classified and peaked, and this is how we came up with, you see two charts, and this in that handout that we gave you two. I did one at the 46.5 average length of stay, and then I did the other one at 25, which is 25, which we think is achievable if the courts and everything keep doing like what we talked about in that meeting and start seeing people get moved out. You can see the big difference. If your average length of stay stays at 46.5 days, by the year 2045, you're gonna need 443 beds. If you can maintain it at 25, then by 2045, 238. So it's such a drastic change in that right there stresses the importance of managing that average length of stay.
Now, the population, the census projections show us relatively flat growth. Is that your?
It's from a county population, actually you're decreasing. It was flat, but you're actually decreasing, but your admissions change. Your average length of stay changes. Your type of offender has changed.
So even with flat growth, you expect the population to increase by 100?
Jail population, yes, sir. Because your type of offender. You know, if you were getting, low-level crime coming in that they can expedite through the court a lot quicker,
Mhm.
then it would probably coincide with what your county population growth is. But since these offenders are requiring longer lengths of stay, then yes, sir, your population is going to increase. Ben, if you want to come up, Ben will show you some of the sites and stuff that we looked at.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
So graphically, what you're looking at here in the bottom right-hand corner is the overall site. And if you could see that the courthouse we're kind of near is pointed out. And to the northwest is the existing site of the jail, which is blown up in the image on the left. And then option C down below to the southeast of this courthouse is the Advanced Manor site, which is a potential site that we've looked at in this study, which you'll see in a few slides. So looking at option A is to tack on to the existing jail with a 94-bed facility that will bring your total up to 242 beds. That uses a site that is now under the ownership of Hendersonville or Henderson City. And that portion, it looks like a wedge, is also across the street. The larger, that's all one plat.
Where's that at? I'm not following.
Like the jail where the jail sits at now?
The current Breckenridge.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Take across the street, you
I'm
talking
trying to
where the
think, where's
residence
that?
is?
No, currently there's a park there. It's
Oh,
King's
behind.
Daughters Park. And that's option B. That's coming up.
Yes.
These are sites that the county gave us to look at, and the ones for the addition is the property that's adjoining where the current jail is. I think it's owned by the town of Henderson. City of Henderson, yeah. But that was what the county had given us to look at. And the other site is the Manor site. That's what he's showing you now. County gave us to look at.
So the entire option A dark gray area that I'm looking at belongs to the city. That entire gray area.
Yes,
Yeah.
partially. And,
Anybody had conversations with the city?
No,
Former manager had informal conversations. Yes, nothing in writing.
that area is, the topography in that area is pretty rough. There's a creek running through it.
We won't be able to do it.
You could do it. I mean, you'd have to pipe under it. It'd be a considerable cost.
But I think the goal for the county that they gave us was we've got to look at expansion options
Mhm.
more than just walking away from it. And so I'm assuming that they had those conversations with the city. They sent us the map and said, here's the properties.
Did you run operational cost on different scenarios?
No, the staffing efficiency of the new addition that we're showing here is gonna be a whole lot more efficient. Currently, your jail, you operate with 3 different control rooms.
Mhm.
So they have to be staffed 24/7.
Mhm.
Plus, you don't have enough housing units to proper classify. So you're putting mixed offenders in together, which is a big liability.
And if we did the extension under this current facility,
It's gonna be-
we'd have at least 4 or maybe 5 operating stations, because that's a 2-story, right?
Right, but that we think we could consolidate. You got one control room. You see that, the little half circle? That looks into all of the different housing units. And we talked about being able to consolidate controls from one of your existing and make all of that be the central control. So you could possibly do away with some of those. You've got 2 control rooms, don't look into housing units now.
Right.
They're just a control room.
All by radio.
But try to consolidate those into that, you would eliminate that. To man, just to give you some kind of idea, to man a control room 24/7, it takes 5 people.
At one time.
One person per shift. So
Right.
You can run 4 12-hour shifts. And then you always gotta have a 5th one, so when those people are on vacation, sick leave.
To fill in.
training And all that, so it takes about 5 people from a staffing point. So if you're eliminating, we can eliminate 2 of those control rooms, you just eliminated 10 staffing positions right there. We think that's a possibility.
Okay.
What's the-
Is that a possibility under all options,
Yes, sir.
all of the options?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one, you're very staff intensive the way that's built now, and you can't see, you don't have hardly any direct lines of sight. And so that causes a lot of issues operation.
So
I
to,
tell people, when did you misbehave at school? When the teacher wasn't in the room? Well, that's the same way with a jail. When inmates can't see you, that's when they're gonna act up the worst.
so adding on won't fix the problems, the current issues.
The bid,
It's gonna fix some. It's not gonna fix them all, no, sir.
So the average lifespan of a jail with your expertise is what?
We're adding to or renovating jails now that we did in the 90s. I mean, it's hard for me to say how long they'll last.
So
Most counties don't like to do a jail very often.
in this situation,
I think you have exceeded the life expectancy of your current facility. If you want a very candid answer.
that's what I want, a
Okay.
candid
I
answer.
think it's very staff intensive.
Mhm.
And I think you've got maintenance problems that's gonna bleed you to death. That you're gonna constantly throw good money after bad. Can we fix some of that? Possibly. But are you gonna be able to fix that whole facility?
No.
Not without spending a lot of money, I think.
That's what I wanted, straight answer.
Question. I know you were talking about, expansion sites, but did you all look up into going up with,
When that jail was built,
Uh-huh.
it's a different code now. So none of the foundations or any of that was put in to support going up. That's a great question, and we get asked that all the time. Back when that was built 30 years ago, codes were totally different. And so they probably told you, you can expand going up. You can't now.
Chair, can I ask a question? That's a question. Todd, does the $27 million figure include renovating the existing space at all, as well as adding on to it?
I'd have to look at that, which estimate you're actually talking about.
There's a $27
We're
million.
speaking to your mic.
I was asking, does the $27 million addition cost include renovating the existing space compared to the $41 million new jail?
It included that 5 million that Bordeaux gave. Now they're saying probably 9 to 10 million, but it's not fixing everything. That's.
So the 27 million was inclusive of the 5 at that time. Okay.
Oh, I didn't understand your question.
When you say we're gonna be throwing good money after bad money, what is it? Good money after bad money in terms of dealing with that.
It's not option.
Then after we do all these millions in terms of what we have in terms of jail, what can we do with the jail after we do all that? After we sock millions into it?
Your current jail, to try to get it back operationally and meeting current standards like it should, it's gonna take a whole lot of money, and you're still gonna have a 30-year-old building. It's designed.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're gonna spend a couple of million, several million in doing that. But the bottom line is what you just said, we've outlived that jail. We basically need a new jail. My thing is after we put $20 million in trying to, what you call it, put a Band-Aid approach.
Patch it.
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do with what can be done with that facility? Nothing, right?
It's hard to convert a jail into
Anything, right?
It really is.
Like
It's
throwing,
got- You got a lot of steel, a lot of concrete.
that's throwing away millions of dollars, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's why we've given you some options that are complete replacements, which give you 250 beds. And that's, this site is also at the city of Henderson. which is
And you
across-
said this site, where is that?
It's, right near the existing jail.
Okay.
It's currently the King's Daughters Park right now.
Behind the jail, what are you talking?
And that
It's right down. past-
has the radial control room, which is more efficient, as Todd pointed out earlier. Option C is actually at the Vance Manor site, which is owned by Vance County. Currently, there is a building on the upper left parcel that is called Gang Free, which is a nonprofit. But we looked into how this 250 bed option can sit on the site as best as it could without being in a flood zone, which is the area in blue. Save you guys maybe some insurance costs. And this one is pretty much the same layout as option B. You have some booking and intake area in the yellow. There's also video arraignment facilities there, which helps cut down on the amount of transportation your inmates would have to go through. The areas in green are the special housing units for your more troublesome inmates.
This design is set up to where every cell, except those in green, are 2-man cells. There's no dorms like what you currently have, so you can properly classify. You see that little gray triangle in the middle?
That's,
That's the only control room. You look into every housing unit from there. And the way the glass is in those control rooms is tilted out, almost like an air traffic controller. So you can see, so inmates can't stand directly underneath and be out of sight. You can still see it. Any of y'all that's been to Granville, we did Granville, their control room is the same way. But the new standard requires rec yards on every housing unit. We were actually doing that before they made it a standard because you don't have to move inmates. Once they're in that housing unit, they're there. And so from a staff efficiency, you can see that's one house, that's one control room that looks into 2, 4, 6, 8 housing units. And they can control going into rec without ever having to leave that housing unit. Video arraignment is there, so they can eliminate going to court. By AOC rules, they can have first appearances on everything except a capital case, which must be done in person in court. Other than that, they can do plea arrangements, they can do lots of different things. They can't do a jury trial, but anything other than probation cases, they can all do remote. So you're not transporting and moving inmates. So much safer for the staff. It's a lot more efficient operations. All the security electronics integrates much like what you don't have now. So if somebody hits an intercom, that camera's gonna come up, that person in that control room not only can talk to that person, they can see who it is, and they can control whether they lock or unlock that door, all of which you don't have now.
So the end of each one is the yard going specifically to that one dorm.
For that one housing unit, yes.
And what I'm hearing is you can classify the inmates that's coming in, so you ain't got two people that's already into it. And all of them can go to their own yard without even a guard coming in and
Right.
out.
And if you needed to have one of those as a restrictive housing, a single cell, you can put one in. But the cost is so negligible for a 2-man cell versus one, it gives you that flexibility to house more inmates. It's only, what's it, five additional square foot, 7 additional square foot to go from a 1-man to a 2-man cell. So the cost of it, nothing.
You're far better off doing, going ahead and building a 2-man cell in.
Right.
And then the sheriff staff can choose to put a single person in that cell if they need to for classification purposes. But from a cost standpoint, you're far better to go ahead and do it.
When you look further down the road, these have mainframes that could be expanded. So all that construction wise.
The other thing that you'll see, you see the gray lines behind the kind of pale colored cells. That is a rear chase. So right now, anytime maintenance has to go in and work in a cell in the current jail, you either gotta move all those inmates out, or you gotta hope maintenance ain't gonna leave them with something that they were working on, a tool with in there. These are rear chases.
Can you,
They're behind, so maintenance can enter and work on all the plumbing and everything from behind it, but never having to move an inmate.
can you clarify mainframe?
It's in construction, most with steel construction. You, on the end of the wall here, you put in a frame that's capable of supporting additional space if you need it. Normally you put on an end wall frame, which doesn't have support. So that's the end of the building there, unless you go back and tear it all to pieces and redo it. But if you put a mainframe construction on the end of it and the proper supports, when you get ready to expand it in the future, you've got that part of it there.
It's almost like a removable panel.
Mhm.
It allows you to extend that housing a little bit further.
So basically you'll have it set up, so if in the future you have to expand, it'll be already, okay.
Depending on how, like, see this short side here, the bottom of that T?
Mhm.
I mean, being able to expand that on out in the future. But depending on how many beds you need to add, you may just add another tower. It just depends on how large you need it. We've got this size 250 just on where we think you currently are, and it's the average population. Should be able to take you for several years.
I had to step out for a minute, so let me ask you a question. For this whole area, the whole perimeter, so how many acres does this encompass? You anticipating how many acres would this
How
be?
large was that manor?
Little 4 acres, I believe.
4 acres?
I think it was about 4 acres in that track, if I remember correctly.
7 acres?
But that's, okay, you got the old school site and then this site separate.
Yeah,
Okay.
those upper three flats are Vance owned, and then below it is owned as well. There's already a building that is not owned by you guys on the far right here.
I can't hear you, bro.
Sorry, You guys.
If good, please,
Not-
please speak into the speaker because this is being recorded and people can't hear it if you're
You
not.
good?
Yeah, you guys, right here do not own, where'd the mouse go? This plat right here. But you do own these three up top. Then the one to the south, and I believe this one. But, as you can see, there was some, topographical, reasons why we didn't put the site there.
No, my question was, if you're looking at this, the geographical area, how many acres would you say this encompasses? Or this is the old site,
For the whole site, we usually would recommend anywhere from 7 to 10.
7 to 10
Give
acres?
you expandability later. So you don't get landlocked, kind of like what you are now. You can't expand where you're at now without purchasing more land. So,
Todd, doesn't this option C show the expansion going into the floodplain though, as you go to?
that can be moved around. You own that property to the right as well. We can flip that building some.
And also the vehicular sally port can be reduced possibly to get you guys out of that.
The
flood.
King Daughters Park, how much land is there?
That's 4.4 acres.
Uh,
4.4 acres for that park.
okay. You said we need how many acres?
I'd recommend 7 to 10. Just allow.
And the jail is now, how much, the jail is now, how many acres?
Sure, how much is on?
Not
current
positive,
jail.
not positive. It's probably around 4 or 5 right now, not positive. So
Sheriff,
If we're talking about a new facility, I don't know which way the county board can go. But if you do, please build out in Canada. I have a serious problem. People walking by, doing drugs, narcotics, their home. And these, that's why I can't have any trustees. And this is a growing problem, it's been a problem for our sheriff, and it's still a problem. Having where people just walk up and throw any contraband at the jail. So
Within the city?
we need a facility
yes,
that is in a compound fence. Where
Yes.
you can drive around
Yes.
and patrol around. Not what people walk up to.
That's my question. You just gave us 3 options. So if you had to choose an option according to what we need, what do you think would be as your professional concerning acres and all that to just told us about? What option would be suitable just for your, even if we went with it or not?
I think walking away from what you got is a smart option, to be honest.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just got way too many issues with.
Well, I understand whether you got option A, B, and C, but you gave us 2 more.
Two different sites.
Sites, yes, uh-huh.
Either one of those sites.
Would be-
One, the county already owns.
Mhm.
So you're noticing that estimate, we didn't have anything for property acquisition. I mean, it's always better county. I think if you put it right there next to the same jail, you're gonna end up with the same problems the sheriff's telling you.
Mhm.
If you go to a lot of the jails that we've done, it's got fences around it. The big misconception is the fence is not to keep the inmates in. The fence is to keep the public off the face of the building to prevent what the sheriff was talking about. You go to Granville, you'll see the fence.
Mhm.
Those inmates should never be out in that grass area.
Mm-hmm.
Never. So that fence is just to keep the public from getting close enough to the building to throw contraband and do stuff. So that's what a fence around a jail is. It's a good question.
if I may interject to directly answer your question, Commissioner. I think the 3 sites that we were asked to evaluate is what we're reflecting here in the study. I think of the 3, option C is the better.
That's
Of
what I
the
was
3.
listening to. So I was
However, I think that option 3 site is still tight
Mhm.
because of the floodplain and because of some of the other issues around that site. If there are other options that the county wants us to look at, we're welcome to do, we're more than happy to do that. Ideally, I think you would have a little bit larger site than what this option 3 represents, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
That's what I want to hear.
yeah, I think at this point, we don't need to get married to a site.
Yeah.
We
I-
just,
But I do
I
want
would-
to
I
hear what
would
the
at
what
this point.
option would
Let me
be.
ask you this question. Building a new site, a new location, will it be built so that expansion can take place above it?
Not above it. We don't never recommend going up.
Say again?
never recommend to go up.
Vertical.
Vertical.
No, I understand that. I mean, the question was asked by a chair lady here. Could you go up where we are? And the answer was no, because of the way the foundations and things are built would not support an upper level. So my question to you is, if the new facility we're building, will it be built in such a manner that if you wanted to go up, you could go up?
It's a two-story facility at the beginning.
Because when I go, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly, and I've only been, I've only seen it from the outside, the Durham jail is a multi-level jail. It's not a one floor jail.
Right.
It's a multi-level floor jail. All right?
Yes, sir.
And so, if we wanted to build, if we're gonna build a new jail, it seems to me we should build it in such a manner that we're not gonna go looking for real estate the next time we need a new jail. We should be able to go up 2 or 3 floors.
I wouldn't recommend that because building codes change every so often, every 5-year cycle or so. And you would get into the same problem that you have with your current facility now. We can't design for what changes in that building code would happen in 5 to 10, 20 years, whatever. We can't predict that. So, that would be difficult. You guys could potentially be in the same situation, at that point, even if we attempted to try to design with that factor in mind. I think you're far better off either going ahead and designing it vertically now and making it a multi-story, or getting a large enough footprint of a site that you can figure out a way to expand it in the future. Those are the better courses of action. That makes sense.
Doesn't Durham hate that they have their facility there? Because when I go to the DPAC, people holler out the window and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
and everything.
They have
So,
had- they have
that's the prisoners hollering out the window and all like that. So it's not good for the DPAC.
The other problem with going vertical, and we've done those, we did 1,034 bid in Guilford.
Yeah.
It's an 8-story. The other problem with going vertical is you're duplicating staff a lot.
It's less efficient.
So your efficiencies are not where they need to be staffed.
We don't have the land real estate price issues that they have, and that's generally when you would go up is when the land is more expensive.
Yeah, Guilford County, that was determined to do it downtown where it was at. And it was a very, very tight site and they needed 1,000 bids. So we had to do 8 stories straight up. I think their staff levels are like 192 to operate that facility. I mean, all these are great questions.
Yes.
But you didn't come with any money.
Should we keep going forward?
Yeah,
So,
we gotta do the estimates.
So there's the 3 options that we were asked to study. And so we've included cost estimates, option A there, which is the addition, renovation to the existing building there. You're looking at a grand total of around 31 million there. Wrong zeros there. As Todd indicated earlier, that does include that 5 million that Bordeaux Construction had already assessed for you guys to bringing it up to meet the deficiencies noted in the jail inspection report. So that 5 million is included in that. We've also included some contingencies and escalation costs because we know that this project's not getting built tomorrow. So it's going to be down the road a while. So those kind of things are included in this. And this is kind of a total project cost here. So there are things that FF&E, furnitures, fixture and equipment, what you would need to upfit the building. You'll have testing requirements during construction and you'll have fees associated with, so that's inclusive, that 31 million is inclusive of all those type components in this. There is option A did include some site acquisition costs there, as you can see, since that parcel would have to be acquired from the city. So that is also included there.
And your contingency cost, was that the 10%?
Contingency cost looks like, yeah,
5%.
yeah, two different 5% there, yes.
Okay, okay, I see.
And then, so then the opinion of probable cause for option B and C are pretty close to one another. It's the standalone facility, so the building footprint itself is pretty much identical. There's just there's slight variations in the site there, so they were pretty negligible, so we kind of lumped them into one estimate there. So that's roughly the 42 million there. And again, that has escalation costs and contingency costs built in, you know, fees and testing requirements and things like that already in it as well. So that kind of outlines, you know, the options there from a cost standpoint. So any questions on that I can help clarify?
If I can ask, what are the miscellaneous fees / costs on each proposal at 10% compared to the contingencies?
So you will obviously have architects, engineers fee. You'll have some fees for testing during construction. You'll have some survey requirements that will have to, you know, a site survey will be part of the project. All of those things are kind of lumped into that fee there.
And when I look at your options and everything, like to build a new facility and what you showed, that can be built on any site, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We just showed it on those two sites because that was the sites the
Okay.
county asked us to evaluate.
Now, one thing Commissioner was just asking, the Granville site includes the sheriff's office. And
Control.
what cost difference do you look if you include that in one? Because, I mean, just based on that.
If we include a sheriff's office in with the jail,
Mhm.
we'd have to look at the required square footage. You're probably looking at, my guess, at this size, probably 15,000 square foot sheriff's office. I don't know where you're at now. For a county this size, around 15,000 square foot is probably minimal. That cost per square foot is a lot cheaper than jail cost per square.
It's about 3 million.
Probably a little bit more than that.
Okay.
Shooting from the hip, I'd say 5, shooting from the hip, without evaluating
Yeah,
what
We'd
your
have to,
needs
we'd
are.
have to meet with, do
Okay.
a study on the sheriff's office
Right.
like we did there.
That's just shooting from the hip.
I will tell you this, if the sheriff's office is located connecting to the jail, then when I do a staffing for the jail, I usually can reduce it. Because if it's a standalone jail away from the sheriff's office, I usually add a couple of people per shift just for response time when something bad happens. If the sheriff's office is connected, there's somebody at that sheriff's office 24/7. And so if you've got to respond in an emergency at the jail, they're already there as opposed to being 5-6 miles apart or wherever.
What time frame are we talking about? What time frame in terms of how long would it take? If we spend $41 million to build a new jail, how long is it gonna take to build?
You're probably talking
You got-
3.5 years before you put an inmate in it.
Be 3.5 years before we could occupy the new jail.
That's after you find the 41 million.
Sorry,
That's after you find the 41 million.
It'll take 12 to, I'd say probably 12 to 14 months design time, go through regulatory authority. And then you're probably talking another 16, 18 months.
So what are we talking about time-wise in renovating the jail? The existing, yeah, option A where your existing jail, you're going to renovate it. Now, what kind of time frame are you talking about?
Roughly the same.
I don't know that it's gonna be a whole lot quicker. There were a few times stuff is gonna take, it might take a little bit. The part of renovating your existing, or that's gonna be a problem, is you're gonna have to move inmates. You know, while they're in there replacing plumbing and electrical and flooring and that kind of stuff, that's gonna.
Yeah.
Like you got to find some county that's gonna house them for you during that time.
But that would be the sheriff's problem. I'm talking about the building, the actual work done to renovate it.
Probably still looking at. Probably.
Still 3 years?
Years.
Still 3 years.
What we would recommend would be do the addition first and then possibly move from the old jail into the addition, which you can to the new part, but you still got other parts of that jail that have to function for it to work cohesively as one. You might could save 6 months maybe, but that's probably a stretch.
Let me ask you a question. If we, say for instance, we did take that option and just build that addition or whatever, approximately how long do you think that the existing part, how long do you think that is gonna last before we have to replace that part?
I think it's already lasted longer than that. You wanted me to be candid. I'm just being honest.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's one of the oldest in the state.
It's outlived its usefulness, right?
I think that's it. Maybe the conclusions, recommendations, you want to go over that?
Right,
They,
yeah,
no, yeah, a part of this study, what we'd requested was on a regionalization option. I don't see any of that in here. We had a brief discussion prior to.
No, there's not anything in here about that because we didn't get anywhere with that. I talked to the sheriff in Granville, who was not interested in that. He said he would house some as long as he had bed space. In North Carolina, to form a regional jail, the sheriff has to voluntarily give it up. Two of the three counties, the sheriff was not willing to give it up. Third county, they don't have any beds now, so you'd still be, if you joined and made a regional, you would still be building. And you'd have transport costs from here to there, which is pretty significant. I don't know that you would save anything by that.
Okay, I guess in the conversation, the short conversation we had prior to the meeting, the sheriff wasn't willing to give up, but he was okay with housing inmates
He
on a per diem.
house what he could at a per diem.
Okay,
He didn't tell me what that per diem would be.
but that door's not totally closed.
No.
Okay,
The two of the three counties that we were asked to look at have a sheriff's office adjoining it.
Mhm.
They share spaces between the sheriff and the jail. So if the sheriff gave up the jail, then they would lose those shared spaces, locker rooms, conference rooms, that kind of stuff. So two of the three were not interested. The third needs a new jail itself, so.
Did he just happen to say how many he could house?
They are participating now in the statewide misdemeanor program,
Uh-huh.
so they're housing quite a few that are not theirs now. I think 130 would be a stretch. That one's 220, I think,
It is
and they've got about 90
90 in there.
players.
So the numbers ain't changed.
well, they, my understanding were housing federal inmates, which the requirements for housing federal inmates are more labor intensive because of exercise requirements and documentation requirements. And there was some conversation about being willing to maybe exchange part of that process at one time.
Actually, there's no different requirement for housing a federal inmate than housing your own.
That's correct.
You can house a federal inmate.
But there's more documentation and paperwork required, what I'm understanding.
Not that much.
It might minimal.
Yeah.
It's not that big.
Okay.
It's not a whole lot. The problem with housing federal inmates is they will not give you a contract. They will give you a agreed upon per diem. And they may bring you 10, they may bring you 100. And if you've got to put one on the floor, it can't be one of theirs. It'll be one of yours. One of their inmates get a bed.
If you have a well-run facility, to get a Fed bed contract, it's, you can do that, but you have to have a good reputation, a modern facility, good healthcare, inmate healthcare, the whole package to secure those contracts, and they're not easy.
And I think that business got fairly competitive a few years back, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Elliott that you got there has got years of experience in dealing with federal inmates.
Does anyone else have any questions? Dan, you have any more?
No.
I
All right.
appreciate it.
We want to thank you all for coming and sharing this information. It's going to be very helpful in our collaboration to see what we're gonna be able to do. And we do appreciate, the time and the efforts you all put in, especially coming to meet with us. We did have a meeting prior to this where we did sit down with the district attorney, we sat down with the sheriff, some of his staff, from the DA and some of the staff from the jail, myself, the county manager, and we did look at different types of situations so that you all could help contemplate this. So, we do appreciate the diligence that you put in, and we just thank you for making yourself open to questions that we have, and we hopefully will, continue to consult with you as we go through this process.
Thank you. I would like to say thank you to Miss Austin from the jail because she was phenomenal getting me the jail data. I do this all the time. If everybody got me the stuff I needed as quickly and as proper as she did, my job would be a lot easier. But I want to say thank you to her. I'm not sure she's.
Yeah, she's here.
She's here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just adjourn the work session.
Does any other commissioners have any concerns concerning this jail situation that you need to discuss? The session is hereby adjourned, and we will be